So we're going to talk about two books, both by Pat Califia. And this one is Macho Sluts, and this one is Public Sex, the Culture of Radical Sex. And I'm going to talk about this one first. We're going to read just a little bit of it. Not much, because there's not much I can really quote from here. Without perhaps getting kicked off WordPress for good. I don't know. So I don't know how they are about that sort of thing. So we'll see.
Okay.
I guess I'll find out. I'm going to read a part. This is from, I think it's a story called The Hustler. Just a minute. Well, I think that's what it is. Anyway, it's page 182. And in this story, it's kind of like what a Pat Califia version of what she would see as a dystopic future, like Margaret Atwood's, what do you call it?
Handmaid's?
Yeah, Handmaid's Tale.
Handmaid's
So it's sort of like that, but from how she would see things being worse, right? And so she's kind of making a little bit, not really fun, just kind of pointing out that, you know, feminism for different people means different things. And so this is what this story is primarily pointing out, right? And Pat's a very educated person and is really good at putting together short stories in ways that you can understand the message. And if you can get through the short story itself, because there's some content that will probably be disagreeable with a lot of people. So anyway, in this one, she's having an interview with a government bureaucrat, and the bureaucrat says, "You've left item 12 blank. Haven't you completed even one child rearing term?" "No. At your age, most women, there's no mandatory age for completion of that requirement. I wonder if I can get away with that line when I'm 35. How about 65? Of course, I could cut through this shit, pretending to look for a job if I would let the agency put me on a baby farm. But I don't think that's a good idea. I can't imagine telling some little shaver why mummy sleeps until dark, then goes for long, long walks with a riding crop stuck down her pants leg. Even if I didn't have to raise the rugrat, and come to think of it, I doubt they'd let me. It makes me nervous to think about bequeathing my genes to some poor kid who might get fucked up by them. I didn't ask to have these exotic sexual preferences or this rebellious streak. That's what's doing an eagle on society's expectations. I cope with myself as best I can. I won't willingly pass the same problems on to someone else." And this is, I think this part of this story is really telling about who she is. And so that's why I wanted to quote that. And James is going to read something before he gets into his cake, if you don't mind, James.
Okay. I don't know what I'm reading. So.
Well, James is reading the introduction to the book. So she really, this is the second, no, that's for that one. This tells a lot about Pat Califia.
So how much?
Read as much as you can.
Okay.
So as much of the introduction as you can, because it's all very important. And
okay, so this is Macho Sluts by Pat Califia. And this is the introduction, and it has the epigraph by Albert Camus, who I think was a Nobel Prize winner. He's characterized as an existentialist thinker. Philosopher might be a little bit too much of a claim, and he was also a literary figure. Liberty is the right not to lie. Liberty is the right not to lie. So now this is Califia. The things that seem beautiful, inspiring, and life-affirming to me seem ugly, hateful, and ludicrous to most other people. This may be the most painful part of being a sadomasochist, this experience of radical difference, separation at the root of perception. Our culture insists on sexual uniformity and doesn't acknowledge any neutral differences, only crimes, sins, diseases, and mistakes. This smug, erotic totalitarianism does hidden violence to dissidents and perverts. It distorts our self-images, ambitions, and dreams. We think we are alone or crazy or ridiculous. Our desire learns to curb itself, and we come to depend on the strength of self-repression for our safety. We live in fear of being known, and such fear stifles the nascent erotic wish before the image of what is wished for can be fully formed. We know we are ugly before we have even seen ourselves, and the injustice of this, the falsehood, chokes me. What then are my choices as a writer and a sadomasochist? I could keep my sexuality private, write about other issues, other sorts of people, and tell myself that these are more important themes, more universal characters, more valid as literature. That involves telling a lie of omission, becoming invisible as a pervert, assuming an undeserved mantle of normalcy and legitimacy. Or I could become an apologist and seek to persuade the tyrannical majority that sadomasochism isn't violent or self-destructive, but that would require telling many little white lies, watering down the descriptions of frightening acts, softening the dialogue, emphasizing what SM has in common with vanilla rather than where they come part company, and appending endless didactic justifications.
Do you want me to read the rest of it?
You sure? What?
Yeah, because I feel
Well,
bad that I've...
just let me end. This kind of fiction makes the non-SM reader feel condescended to and lied to. It bores the well-disciplined reader and confirms the suspicion that our lives and visions are too trivial and base for explication. So that just ends the paragraph there.
So I feel bad because James wants to eat the cake and I'm just sitting here. And besides, it kind of defeats what she's trying to say if I'm making you read.
Well, it doesn't matter. I mean, I could read anything and it would.
Yeah, well, that's what I felt like about it, but now I feel kind of funny
whether
about
I read it aloud or to myself. I mean, I can read Adolf Hitler, I can read Karl Marx, I can read...
No, that's not what I feel funny about.
Okay.
I feel funny about me telling you to do something and you doing it. Because,
no, you didn't tell me. You kind of asked me. You asked me before.
I asked beforehand.
Right? So.
And anyway, but I don't want it to seem like I'm ordering James around because I'm not. I don't.
No, she doesn't order. So I don't think I ordered you around. So anyway.
No.
So there we go.
No. We're both submissive by nurture, so this is
I mean, this is
not us.
Reading some of her stuff, I'm going, geez, I can't relate to
sometimes
that.
Sometimes it took me a while to get through it. Like, there's one story in here, the Calyx of Isis. Holy Dinah. That one, I had to put down several times.
You know it's supposed to be Hokey Dinah. My mom used to say that. Hokey Dinah.
Oh, really?
You said that sometimes.
No.
Anyway, it's hilarious. I like it.
So, anyway, I have to admit I had trouble with that one. There is a little bit in here that I had a hard time getting through. But once I did, I realized, wow, is that ever some of the most important stuff I've ever read. And the Calyx of Isis in particular in this, if you can actually sit down and read it, you'll go, okay, this is worth writing a whole novel about. Just analyzing this story, because genius. So,
but you wouldn't necessarily recommend it to every
no.
And there we go. So
there are very few people that I think could get through this.
Exercise your
caution.
discretion.
And I want to point out something. Erotic fiction. This is not a how-to manual. This is not showing you, here's what you can do in your spare time. Just wing it. No. Erotic fiction. Fiction.
No, a lot of people I don't think find it very erotic, but
no.
Anyway, most people, vast majority.
Yeah, this is a particular taste. So, I will continue reading this while James eats, and I'm not going to do nearly as good a job reading it as James would have done, because he is a far better reader than I am. I don't actually know what a lot of words sound like. I read them,
You've read them many
in my
times.
head.
Is
Yeah,
that
and
correct?
I don't. If I read them aloud, then he'll say, "Oh, that's da da da," and I'll, "Oh, that's how that's supposed to be pronounced." But I didn't know. I've been reading it for years. Whatever. But so this might be a little bit embarrassing for me.
Well,
But
sometimes I sure I get it wrong. But if you hang around universities long enough, like I have, then you'll run across most words. People use them. Even four-letter words. Isn't that amazing? But, yeah.
so, it doesn't feel as if I really have a choice. Writing's hard work. It's boring and lonely, and there are too many long stretches of panic and self-hatred between the moments of inspiration. I have never been able to endure this drudgery and finish a piece that I did not care about passionately. There isn't enough lustful electricity in the work to keep the batteries charged during the false starts, tedious revisions, and backtracking away from dead ends to come up with a proper finish. I run down like a neglected wind-up toy. These short stories are attempts to tell the truth about my own desires and are written for people who understand what I need and value what I see. I would rather be a tribal storyteller than a self-conscious member of the literati or a leather missionary churning out tracts for a bunch of people who will never think of themselves as heathens. This book will be accused of being pornographic and thus misogynistic, a piece of hate literature. So let me say explicitly, at the risk of sounding foolish, that this is a Valentine in its original form, a cunt held open by a woman's thrusting fingers. It is a visible act of love, written for any reader who is not a traitor to her own cunt. It has something to do with hatred too, but not what you assume. It was meant to generate some of the hope that leather dykes need as much as they need raw courage to survive in a hostile world. I want more of us to make it to adulthood without being driven mad or driven normal or driving off a cliff. And I want more of us, period. So this book is also a recruitment poster, as flashy and fast and seductively intimidating as I could make it. You might not like the women in my stories, but all of them, tops and bottoms, are strong women. They are not completely autonomous human beings. Even I can't suspend disbelief to that extent, but they chafe under any restrictions. You won't get any charity fucks out of them because they don't feel sorry for you, nor will they say something that will make you feel bad about yourself under the guise of upgrading your id, and your politics. They are selfish bitches, but they know how to have a good time, and if you amuse them, they could show you a very good time as well. They don't want to save the whole world, but they know it's essential to be able to save your own ass. These are women who get to be heroes, have adventures, kick up their heels, and kick butt. Under the guise of keeping you entertained, reader mine, I want to get some social criticism flowing as well as some J.O. grease. Why exactly is it that pornography, especially pornography about sexual minorities, is assumed to be either worthless trash or toxic waste? Why has it taken so long for any sex books, whether their jackets are leather or flannel, by and for lesbians, to be written? How does this new genre of porn function? Most people, even the nicest sort of liberal who opposes censorship, assume that porn isn't worth defending because it's thrown together, hurriedly produced garbage intended to make a quick buck, and people do spend a lot of money on mass market pornography, despite the fact that most of it is flat and stale. The average porn novel is typed, not written. You have to work at breakneck speed to make a living when you get paid maybe $200 a book. It's no wonder that the work attracts hacks. Even the porn writers who aren't hacks feel contempt for their audience as well as themselves, and it permeates their material. Illegal businesses are even more tightly controlled than legitimate enterprises. And this overpriced offensive swill is the only graphic sex that's readily available. This won't change unless obscenity is decriminalized and competition makes it necessary for porn producers to cut into their profits with a little quality control. In other words, don't hold your breath. That sad fact that the porn industry makes an obscene profit with its degraded product is just an index of how badly people want to learn about sex and get turned on. It doesn't tell you anything about what people would like to buy if there really was any choice. But these marketplace conditions do not apply to by and for lesbians porn, because lesbians hardly constitute a mass market on the scale of the mafia or the vice squad is accustomed to. The term lesbian pornography used to refer to material that didn't feature lesbians and wasn't intended for a lesbian audience. Now a few entrepreneurs, artists, filmmakers, writers, and poets are pouring their creative energy into making homegrown lesbian porn. These businesses are undercapitalized and labor-intensive. Most of them don't show a profit. Their product is a welcome relief from the straight-produced stuff, which usually misses the point entirely. It is immensely popular among lesbians. This new kind of pornography has been confiscated by agents of the state, especially in Canada, and banned from significant numbers of feminist bookstores. Many women's publications routinely give sexually explicit work, even nonfiction, lesbian sex manuals, savage reviews. Is the crime of obscenity synonymous with bad writing? Or with being a man out to make a quick buck? Apparently not. As the judge who banned Coming to Power in New Zealand said, some of the stories are well written, but the book is, in the finding of the tribunal, clearly indecent. The same tribunal had classified the joy of lesbian sex to be indecent in the hands of a person under the age of 18, and despite the fact that the book is well written, informative, and well presented. The subject is sensitively handled, and by comparison with other manuals on lesbianism is of a superior standard, and despite the fact that lesbianism is not outside the law in New Zealand. Well-written, sexually explicit material is sometimes even more threatened to the status quo than pulp. In The End of Obscenity, Charles Rembar, the attorney who successfully defended Lady Chatterley's lover, The Tropic of Cancer, and Fanny Hill against obscenity charges, comments on the problems he faced writing legal briefs that argued that these works should not be banned. One was well-written obscenity. The cry had plagued us all through these cases. Good writing, even one of my opponents had declared, is no excuse. If not all of them said, as many of them did, the better the writing, the more dangerous the book. They all agreed that literary quality could not make an obscene book non-obscene. People who wring their hands because obscenity laws have been used to hassle the publishers of D.H. Lawrence and James Joyce are correct to bemoan the chilling effect this has had on including sexuality in serious, i.e. pornographic fiction. But they miss another crucial point. Because the censors are even more afraid of well-written porn than they are of explicit-written, expletive-written drivel, publishers shy away from pornographic manuscripts that are too literary, because in the past, this has incurred the wrath of the authorities. The dearth of good writing in porn is at least as tragic as the dearth of sex in literature. It persists despite the fact that literary quality is now considered to be one sort of social value that may rescue a work from being declared obscene and vulnerable to being confiscated and destroyed, at least in this country. The task of creating high-quality pornography is a challenge worthy of any talented writer. It just isn't that easy to get a reader hopelessly and unforgettably aroused. I'm not talking about the autoerotic Pavlovian response that some folks have developed to the repetition of certain key words. I'm talking about phrases that stay with the reader, images that come back into the middle of the workday and make her blush, a book that she will want to read again and won't loan to her friends because she knows she'll never get it back, not a disposable paperback she can toss in the garbage without remembering if she ever read it or not. Sadly, a lot of new lesbian porn, brave as it is, flunks what Dorothy Allison calls the wet test. When you're writing for free, which most of the contributors to the lesbian-owned sex magazines are, it's difficult to take enough time to transform a rough draft into an effective piece of stimulation. But there's another problem that all the money in the world won't solve, and that's the fact that many lesbian pornographers just aren't brave enough. I suspect that many of us aren't writing about what really gets us wet. We're writing about what we think should get us wet, or we're writing about what we did last weekend, which might have been very nice then, thank you, but doesn't stretch the imagination. Journal entries make lousy fiction. Feminist erotica that presents a simplistic view of lesbian sex as two women in love in a bed who embody all the good things the patriarchy is trying to destroy isn't very sexy. This stuff reads as if it were written by dutiful daughters who are trying to persuade mom that lesbian sex isn't dirty, and we really are good girls after all. It isn't challenging or stirring enough. The autoerotically inclined lesbian reader deserves more bang for her buck. And mom is never going to believe that nice girls put their hands in other girls' panties anyway. It's much more inspiring for an aspiring pornographer to dispense with wearing her panties or drop them on or wear them on her head. Lesbian writers have got to loosen up, drop our drawers, spread our cheeks, stick out our tongues and get nasty. Women, especially lesbians, exist under conditions that make us frightened to step out of line, frightened to change the status quo, almost unable to imagine what bold and brassy peacock creatures we could be if we were free. Lesbian culture is impoverished, and if we're ever going to be free, we must have the vision of that woman of the future, including her ideas about what sexy means and looks like, and what pleasure is and what it's worth. Sex may seem like a trivial part of a radical futuristic vision, but if we are not safe to indulge in this playful, vulnerable, and necessary activity, pleasure ourselves and the others who fascinate us, how safe can a society be for women? A world that guaranteed food, shelter, medical care, full employment, literacy, daycare, civil rights, and democracy, but denied us a sexual license, would make us nothing but well-fed domestic animals with suffrage. It takes a lot of guts for lesbian writers to push beyond our anger about what women aren't allowed to do. We're prey to the suspicion that it's our fault and women don't deserve anything better. We're afraid of more opportunity because we might fail. This affects our ability to engender new, or at least accurate, sexual images that are genuinely exciting. The power of the censor within is awesome. The only way I could write some of these stories was to pretend I wasn't going to publish them. Nobody's an expert on women's sexuality. Most women aren't even experts on their own libidos. I doubt anyone ever would be qualified to generalize about what all women want or prescribe certain sexualities as being anti-woman. But if enough of us speak out about our dreams and obsessions, a body of genuine knowledge can accumulate and make all of us feel less crazy, less alone with what we cannot live without. When you're dealing with an area as permeated with ignorance and superstition as sexuality, it is more important to be honest than it is to be correct, to say, I want this now, before rushing to assert, I will want this when I know and accept what is best for me. Lesbians are constantly being told by the rest of the world that we're ugly, boring, unimportant. This kind of shit takes a toll on our self-esteem. Same cues that alert other lesbians to our availability and sexual prowess seem odd, annoying, and unattractive to straight people. And they don't have any tact about letting us know it. On the bus, at work, grocery store, on the street, in the gym, at the tie rack at the menswear department. Lesbian pornography, especially if it has some humor, is a powerful antidote to this dehumanizing grind. It reassures us that it's worth putting on that white silk shirt and bomber jacket, polishing our boots before we go out, that somebody's going to get the message. It says there's a woman out there looking for a girl in a magenta satin dress with spaghetti straps, so fluff up your hair, strap on those dancing shoes, and go someplace where she can find you. See, in this light, lesbian pornography is just dyke entertainment, but I have never understood why anybody would think entertainment was trivial. If you live in a society that wishes you didn't exist, anything you do to make yourself happy disrupts its attempts to wipe you out, or at the very least, make you invisible. Institutions that provide amusement always come under attack by Puritans and fascists, partly because these people know they are pompous buffoons and easy targets for ridicule. The Cromwellians shut down the theatre in England. The Victorians attacked the novel as a depraved and vicious literary form that was especially dangerous for women. Today's fundamentalist Christians go after MTV, and some women's bookstores try to incise pornography from the lesbian body of literature. There is no easier, faster way to transmit information or a system of values than by presenting it in a format that makes people laugh, dance, get turned on, or just feel good. What is it that they don't want you to hear? I do not believe that sex has an inherent power to transform the world. I do not believe that pleasure is always an anarchic force for good. I do not believe that we can fuck our way to freedom, but this is not what the discourse of sexual repression tells us. In that discourse, unleashed sex has enormous disruptive potential. Minority forms of sex have to be repressed, or the social contract will hang in tatters. People will look to their friends and lovers for warmth, affection, love, and support instead of to their biological families. Women and children will have no protection from male violence. Work for the sake of work will cease to be valued. The 9 to 5, 5 days a week wage labor that's the foundation of commerce will be disrupted by bored, frustrated workers who use any excuse to come in late, get high as often as possible to alleviate their tedium, rip off their employers, spend their evenings trying to pick somebody up in a bar, and going to political meetings organized by antisocial elements. Nobody will go to church. Children will be thoughtlessly conceived and carelessly reared, and venereal diseases will flourish. This is, of course, in wild opposition to our present system. I suspect that what is really being protected by censorship, anti-abortion, homophobic campaigns, is the self-image of the so-called majority. Consider how narrow the range of acceptable sexual behavior is. Nobody comes out looking normal once you know the whole truth about how they fuck and what they think about when they jerk off. The citizens are terrified of losing their heterosexual privilege, which will happen if the assumption that there is a sexual consensus, a few simple sexual things that are, or should be, enough for any normal person is challenged. Sex alone can't liberate us, but in the meantime, it comforts us. Women want to and need the freedom to be outrageous, out of doors, out of bounds, out after dark, without being silenced or punished by stigma, battery, forced reproduction, or murder. We have a right to pleasure ourselves and access pornography if a part of that, and access to pornography is a part of that. So she goes on about how her taste in pornography is different than most lesbians, and if you read this, you will certainly know how it is. Or maybe whatever, you'll get to know what she's interested in. And she goes on to talk about AIDS, and she talks about how the AIDS epidemic she doesn't think that ever they should have threatened to close down bathhouses or anything like that. What should have been done is insist that people wear condoms or use protection, and that's what would have been better, or something like that. I don't know if she does that here. It might have been in that book. And okay, and now I'm on to page 20. Macho sluts are supposedly a contradiction in terms, like virgins and whores. The slut is, in Dworkin's parlance, male property, a victim of male violence, a woman who accepts male definitions of her sexuality. Instead, I believe that she's someone men hate because she's potentially beyond their control. If she has to pleasure many men briefly to escape belonging permanently to one particular man, she will. Whores are always accused of being lesbians because they get men to part with some of their property instead of becoming property themselves, and because they're more interested in how thick a man's wallet is than the length of his dick. The whore doesn't sell her body, she sells her time. So she has time that is not for sale, that belongs to no one but herself. Domesticated women don't dare put a price on their time. They wind up with no demarcation between business and pleasure, public and private, so they have no time and space of their own. They do everything for love, but nobody gives them the same care they lavish on others. If they're used and despised, they can't protect themselves. They're poor because they give everything away. But it's the John who has to give something away to the whore. He must tell her his secret desires if he is to get his money's worth. The whore, in turn, gives nothing away, laughs at him when she keeps her secrets and pockets his cash. And then she says the women are not supposed to have machismo either. Or thought to have. Whatever. I'm afraid, I'm on page 21 now, I'm afraid that the opprobrium of right-wing pro-censorship feminists is not the worst thing that will confront this book. We are in the middle of a crackdown of porn, especially SM porn.